What is a fact or statistic that seems fake but is real? I saw a scale model of the Earth, Moon and Sun in a museum. The Sun was about the size of a basketball, and the Earth was on the opposite side of the room, the size of a small marble, I'd guess about 30 meters away. The Moon was the size of a tiny pinhead, about 10 centimeters away from the Earth. On this scale, the nearest star to Earth, Proxima Centauri, wouldn't be in the same building, or even in the same city. It would be 10,000 kilometers away. And that's just one star, the nearest one to us, in a galaxy containing billions of stars, which is just one of billions of galaxies. The scale of the universe really is mind-bogglingly big, far bigger than we can begin to comprehend. Space is big, really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemist, but that's just peanuts to space. Our planet, when compared to our Sun, is ludicrously small. You could fit about 1.3 million Earths inside the Sun. Our Sun is a yellow dwarf type star. In stellar terms it's pretty minor. Aldebaran is a red giant type star. You could fit about 86,000 of our suns inside Aldebaran. That's approximately 111.8 billion Earths. Betelgeuse is a red supergiant star. You could fit around 1 million suns inside Betelgeuse. That's 1.3 trillion Earths. We're not done yet. VY Canis Majoris is a red hypergiant star. 3.2 billion suns can fit inside Canis Majoris. That means you could fit 416 quadrillion Earths inside there. I could go on. VY Canis Majoris is far from the largest known star in our galaxy, and there's likely to be far larger stars out there that we've not discovered yet. The scale of the universe and how tiny and insignificant we are in it is staggering. Look again at that dot that's here. That's home. That's us. On it everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. Carl Sagan. Please stop, I cannot have an existential crisis in my cubicle. In English, the color orange was named after the fruit. Before that, orange was just considered a shade of red. That's why gingers are called redheads. It's also why robins can be called robin redbreasts. Similarly, purple didn't exist as a name for the color for a long time, which is why red onions and red cabbages are called red. Edit, my mistake, the last part about red onions and red cabbages is not true, as you/Rajuev pointed out below. There are plenty of languages where green and purple are shades of blue and red, respectively. Japanese for instance, there is a word for green, Midori, but you talk about blue traffic lights and blue apples, aoi ringo, instead of green. Oranges were originally called sinapophils, Chinese apples, in Old English because that was where they were thought to come from, and the color orange was red gold. After the Spanish Reconquista, the English started importing them from Spain in much greater numbers, and people borrowed the French name them pomme d'orange, orange apples, which was derived from their Arabic name naran. At roughly the same time the word became used for the color as well. There's also a region in France called Orange whose name evolved independently of the color or the fruit and gave its name to the House of Orange who ruled the Netherlands and occasionally the UK, and who took orange as their royal color, which is why religious extremists in bowler hats wear orange sashes while indulging in sectarian violence in Belfast. More strangely, carrots used to be purple, but an orange variety was bred to honor the Dutch monarchy and it became so popular it replaced the purple type. Fun orange facts. Sharks have existed longer than trees have. Sharks are also older than the rings of Saturn. Grasshoppers are also older than grass. Used to be just called hoppers. New Delhi hired people to hunt cobra snakes, which led to people having cobra farms to earn money. Then the government stopped the project, which led the cobra farmers to release their snakes, causing twice as many snakes than they first started. Greater than shortly before the patrician came to power, there was a terrible plague of rats. The city council countered it by offering 20 pence for every rat tail. This did, for a week or two, reduce the number of rats, and then people were suddenly queuing up with tails. The city treasury was being drained, and no one seemed to be doing much work, and there still seemed to be a lot of rats around. Lord Vetinari had listened carefully while the problem was explained, and had solved the thing with one memorable phrase which said a lot about him, about the folly of bounty offers, and about the natural instinct of Ankh-Morporkians in any situation involving money. Tax the rat farms. Invasive species invade. One way or another, humans are everywhere. Cobras aren't invasive to India. They are just dangerous. They occur naturally there. We live closer in time to Tyrannosaurus rex than the T-Rex did to the Stegosaurus. The thing that fucked me up was realizing that trilobites, which are an entire class of animals unto themselves, like mammals or reptiles, and these beings were not just extinct before the first dinosaurs existed, they were even fossilized before then, meaning that any trilobite, which is a very common type of fossil that can be found at most shops that sell them, has existed in fossil form for longer than the entirety of the existence of the dinosaurs up until now. But wait, there's more, because the reason I picked trilobites specifically is not just that they are such a common fossil, though it is related to it, because there's a reason they're so common today. Trilobites were around for 270 million years before they went extinct. For reference, the first dinosaurs emerged 230 million years ago, meaning that trilobites, which were already fossils by the time the first dinosaurs showed up, were around for longer than the time from when the first dinosaurs emerged to the present day. We as humans cannot even begin to comprehend such lengths of time. What I am comprehending is there were billions of giant trilobites all around the planet when it was probably a wildly different environment. More in this vein. Cleopatra lived closer to today than the building of the Great Pyramids. One or more of your ancestors were alive during every major historical event, and even all the way back to the dinosaurs and earlier. A million seconds is 12 days. A billion seconds is 31 years. A trillion seconds is 31,688 years. People have a lot of trouble comprehending numbers that big. The difference between a million and a billion is almost a billion. Plus or minus 0.1%, yup, math checks out. Tom Scott did an interesting video on this. He drove the distance of $1 million if you put $1 bills side to side. He was still in the car park. Then he drove to make 1B. He was driving for about 2 hours and traveled over 100 miles. Horses kill more people every year in Australia than all the other beasties combined. Everyone thinks it's the spiders and snakes that'll get you, but it's the horses you've really got to watch. Even their fucking horses are poisonous? Not poisonous, venomous. Does this include all the people who commit suicide from gambling on horse racing? George Washington didn't know dinosaurs existed. What an idiot. Not my president. While dino fossils had been found previously, nobody started figuring out what they really were until after the 10th president of the US was in office, 1841. It took us more time to go from bronze swords to iron swords than it did for us to go from iron swords to nuclear weapons. And now we sit here and a war can be totally depersonalized. Some soldier starts as rocket launcher, enters a target coordinate, and a rocket costing as much as lifelong social security for a few families precisely turns a building over 100 kilometers away into rubble. This is all supervised by football-sized drones with high-resolution cameras, which allows the impact to be recorded and shared with millions of people cheering or booing depending on which faction they support. What will happen within the next decades? All of the above but with ads in the middle. Shows you how much better bronze swords were. /s. After the British made head protection mandatory in World War I, the amount of head wounds increased. It's due to they were no longer Kia, but only a head wound. This, children, is called survivorship bias. I knew an anti-vaxxer that held a poll on Facebook, asking if people died from measles. I could not get her to understand that dead people don't participate in her poll. This sort of happened in World War II but with planes. Planes were coming back with bullet holes and banged up, so originally they planned to reinforce those areas. Until someone wisely suggested they should armor the parts which weren't bullet-riddled, because it meant if those parts got hit, the plane went down and didn't return to base. The parts which did have bullet holes but still returned, didn't need as much additional armor. And that's how we came up with the concept of survivorship bias. If you took the populations of both China and India, then removed 1 billion people from each, they would still be the two most highly populated countries on Earth. And you'd probably be convicted of crimes against humanity for wiping out 2 billion people. 1 man dying is a tragedy, 1,000 men dying is a statistic. Someone's killed 100,000 people. We're almost going ... Well done. You killed 100,000 people? You must get up very early in the morning. I can't even get down to the gym. Eddie Izzard. You'd get the same sentence for killing 2 billion as killing 2 people. So, if you kill 2, don't bother stopping there, I guess? Life in prison or execution can't really be topped. The Oxford University in England existed centuries before the rise and fall of the Aztec civilization. I'll be honest, of all the facts here that one actually highly impressed me. That's absolutely insane. Centuries before even the indigenous Maori first arrived on New Zealand. Related, but Madagascar was first settled in the 800s. By Polynesians. Yeah. Some crazy-mfers canoed across the Indian Ocean to be the first to reach it. Greenland is further north, south, east and west than Iceland. A little map for you. Plus nowhere in the contiguous US is north of the most southerly bit of England. The closest US state to Africa is Maine. Earth's curvature really makes things unintuitive. Florida looked closer to me, so I checked it. It's 1,500 kilometers farther from Africa than Maine. That's about 35% farther. West, duh. North, duh. South, east. If you made $100,000 a day since birth, you'd still not be worth as much as Bezos. If I made $100,000 a day since my birth, I'd be very, very happy. Saw this one yesterday. If you made $5,000 a day since Columbus sailed the ocean blue, 1,492, you still wouldn't even be a billionaire. On the bright side, this one is only true for another 16 years. Wombat poo is cube shape, to stop it rolling away. I can't believe I just googled images of wombat poo. That's some interesting shit. Why don't they want it to roll away? If we lost all the dead space inside our atoms, we would each be able to fit into a particle of dust, and the entire human species would fit into the volume of a sugar cube. Don't try this at home, or anywhere else for that matter. Especially near a horse or a cup of coffee. Sorry, I need my space. Cleopatra lived closer in time to the mobile phone than she did the construction of the pyramids. There was a window of time where a samurai could have faxed Abraham Lincoln. Greater than there was a window of time where a samurai could have faxed Abraham Lincoln. Why didn't they, then? If I were a samurai, I'd be faxing Abe Lincoln all the time. He was out of toner. The pyramids are so old, that when Cleopatra and Julius Caesar were alive they were already considered as very old. Continents move at the same rate that fingernails grow, which is also the same rate that the moon is receding from the Earth. Interesting, and a bit worrying maybe. But that's a future gen problem. Assuming no outside influence, the moon will never escape the Earth. In about 50 billion years the tidal forces between the moon and the Earth will balance out, at which point the moon will reach its maximum orbit distance, with an orbital period of 47 days, and the Earth's rotation will have slowed to 47 days, at which point only one side of the Earth will face the moon. This was an estimation question on a test for my freshman physics class, many years ago. Given the Atlantic Ocean is expanding at approximately the rate your fingernails grow, estimate how long it would take for the Atlantic to be 100 kilometers wider? Or something like that. It was clever enough that I remember it like 25 years later. Ludwig Boltzmann, who spent much of his life studying statistical mechanics, died in 1906, by his own hand. Paul Ehrenfest, carrying on the work, died similarly in 1933. Now it is our turn to study statistical mechanics. States of Matter by David Goodstein. How is he doing these days? I think the full quote is even better. Greater than Ludwig Boltzmann, who spent much of his life studying statistical mechanics, died in 1906, by his own hand. Paul Ehrenfest, carrying on the work, died similarly in 1933. Now it is our turn to study statistical mechanics. Perhaps it will be wise to approach the subject cautiously. You are more likely to be married to Kim Kardashian in the United States than you are to die of Ebola in the United States. I know. Poor sample size and all. To even have Ebola, I think only 2 people contracted and neither died. The number 1 cause of death for pregnant women is murder. In the USA, it's heart disease in my country. Truly sad, and sadly, true. In a positive light, it's good that we've advanced medical care to the point that other humans is the leading cause of death. Santiago, Chile is farther east than New York City. Another way I've heard it is, if you start in NYC and head directly south, you'll eventually be in the Pacific Ocean. If you start anywhere and head in any direction, eventually you'll end up in the Pacific Ocean. Reno, Nevada is more west than LA. The weight of a sloth is anywhere up to 1/3 poop. Sharks are the largest threat to the internet. The sharks is cause they keep trying to eat the cables. And they do it because of the electrical pulses they feel from it. That's a big part of how they find fish. The Appalachian, Scottish Highlands, and the Atlas Mountains are actually the same prehistoric mountain range. They're so old that the oldest caves have no fossils. Bones weren't much of a thing back then. The Appalachians are very old, and when new would have been higher than the Himalayas. Yeah, the Appalachians were supposedly the highest mountains to have existed, but I wasn't around then, so I can't testify 100%. There are 80 unvigintillion possible arrangements of a 52-card deck. A bit more than that, that's just the number rounded off. The actual number is 80 unvigintillion 658 vigintillion 175 novemdecillion 170 octodecillion 943 septendecillion 878 sextillion 571 quindecillion 660 quaduordecillion 636 tridecillion 856 duodecillion 403 undecillion 766 decillion 975 nonillion 289 octillion 505 septillion 440 sextillion 883 quintillion 277 quadrillion 824 trillion. 52. We know there's 52 cards. No need to yell. Chainsaws were invented to assist with childbirth. In 1780, two Scottish doctors invented the prototype of the chainsaw, not to cut down trees or clear debris. No, John Aitken and James Jeffrey invented the hand-cranked chainsaw to cut through the pelvises of delivering mothers who were having trouble pushing their babies out. Stillborn. I wish I could send a slow clap over a comment. You deserve my reluctant upvote. Disturbing. But then again, medical experimentation most of the time is. At a certain time of the year, when the moon is the furthest away from the Earth, the other 7 planets can fit in the space between the Earth and moon. Even with Saturn and Jupiter being that big. Cool. I'm going to leave Uranus jokes at rest, for now. Wow, so even Uranus fits between the Earth and the moon at some point. Fascinating. Imagine a rope circling the Earth so it is tight, and the Earth is a perfect sphere. You want to lengthen the rope so it is 1 meter above the ground all the way around. How much extra rope do you need? About 6.3 meters extra. Any sphere, not just the Earth, Sun, Jupiter. Size is irrelevant. Yeah, the cool example to start with is a basketball, because you can do the experiment with kids in a classroom, then you show the equation and have them work it out for the Earth. Wham! Math all over their brains. Chiromancy is the art of divination/prediction by studying cheese. I predict this will match nicely with a Sauvignon Blanc and a selection of dried fruit. New D&D character unlocked. Trees existed millions of years before rot, so trees, for millions of years, didn't rot. This is why we have coal, and also why coal is a non-renewable resource, because now trees rot. We can technically recreate coal, mainly a function of pressure, heat, and time, just that it'll take more energy than the theoretical energy produced by our created coal. Does that have to do something with the difference in oxygen levels? Like, back then there was like 35% oxygen, in comparison to nowadays 20-ish%. In a randomly selected group of 23 people there is a 50% 2 of them will share a birthday. How can that be? My mind doesn't compete. Can you elaborate please? You're thinking, what are the odds that person A shared a birthday, when there are only 23 people here? You should be thinking, what are the odds person A shared a birthday with person B, or person C, or person D? Or that person B shares a birthday with person C, or person D, or person E? Or that person C shares a birthday with person D or person E or person F? Or that person D shares a birthday with, etc. The number of combinations you're comparing is way higher than you think at first. Barcode scanners scan the white lines, not the black ones. I mean, black doesn't reflect light, so that makes sense. Cheers. I didn't expect to have strong feelings about this topic, but I hate this. 3 out of every million Icelandic people are Bjork. Wait, wasn't that the sound an Icelandic dog makes? The Vatican has 2 popes per square kilometer. And until recently there were 4 popes per square kilometer. German football defender Philipp Lahm played for almost 20 years and never got a red card. Mind you, he was a defender and played in a top league and was never sent off for fouls. Ryan Giggs had a 24-year playing career and never got a red card too. Mind, he did have a few red cards off the field, like beating his own wife and shagging his brother's wife. But on the field he played with respect. He loved each opponent like most people love their brother. Unfortunately, he also loved his brother like most people love an opponent. What a legend. especially given that VAR wasn't around and refs would just go on their instincts, leading to countless unjust cards.